There's something strange about summer horror. Summer is supposed to feel safe, open, bright. It's supposed to belong to long afternoons, lake water, sunscreen, mosquito bites, campfires, sleeping bags, and the sound of screen doors closing behind us. Summer is the season of cabins, campgrounds, boathouses, docks, vacation towns, and old camps tucked deep among the trees. It's the season when people leave their ordinary lives behind and step into places that feel temporary, places where rules loosen, places where adults are distracted, places where teenagers wander off in pairs, places where the woods press close and the lake turns black after sunset. And perhaps that is exactly why summer horror unsettles us so much, because it takes the places we associate with freedom and turns them into traps. It takes the cabin, the dock, the campfire, the quiet lake at dusk, and asks us what might be waiting just beyond the circle of light. Welcome to The Hollow Between, a podcast of folklore, ghost stories, and the uncanny. I'm Candace, and tonight, beside the lantern light, I have a story for you. So settle in with a blanket and a cup of something warm, because tonight we're stepping into the world of summer slashers, cult horror followings, survival rules, and the figure known as the final girl. And later, beside the lantern light, I'll share an original story called The Last Counselor at Wrenwood Lake. Just a brief content note before we begin. Tonight's episode discusses slasher films, fictional violence, and survival horror. We won't linger on anything too graphic, but the subject matter does include blood, danger, and the aftermath of violence. So, with that said, let's head on down to the lake. Slasher stories have a way of feeling both modern and ancient. On the surface, they belong to movie screens, masked killers, cabin doors, footsteps outside, a phone line cut at the worst possible moment. Beneath all that, slashers often behave like folklore. There are stories about warnings, rules, consequences, places with reputations. They are the stories people repeat because they feel like they could happen to someone else, or perhaps because they already did, in some version, somewhere. The details change. The camp gets a different name, the lake gets deeper, the killer wears a different mask. The survivor tells the story differently each time, but the pattern remains. A group goes somewhere isolated. They ignore the warnings. They break the rules. Something begins to stalk them. And by morning, only one person may be left to tell what happened. That structure is not so different from an old campfire tale. It begins with a place everyone knows not to visit after dark. It includes a warning no one takes seriously. And it ends with a survivor whose story becomes the next warning. Summer camps, cabins, lakes, and vacation towns are especially powerful settings because they're supposed to be temporary sanctuaries. People go there to escape, to unplug, to become someone slightly different just for a little while. A camp can feel like its own small world. There are cabins with names, trails with nicknames, a dining hall, a lake, a bell that calls everyone to meals, a fire pit where songs are sung year after year until no one remembers who first taught them. Camp has rituals, first day games, late night campfires, ghost stories whispered after lights out, cabin competitions, secret crushes, swimming tests, friendship bracelets, the smell of wet towels and bug spray. It's a place built on memory. And because of that, it's also a place where stories can cling. Every camp has rumors. The cabin nobody wants, the trail counselors avoid, the lake no one swims in after dark, the old caretaker who supposedly still walks the property, the camper who disappeared before anyone there was born. Most of these stories are harmless. Some are invented to scare new campers. Some are exaggerations. Some are little more than tradition. But they work because camp already feels separate from ordinary life. Once you leave the main road and pass beneath the old wooden sign, you are somewhere else. Somewhere with its own rules. And in slasher stories, those rules matter. One reason summer slashers have such staying power is that they feel like urban legends told by flashlight. You can almost hear the beginning. There was this camp. There was this lake. There was this counselor. There was one girl who survived. The slasher film understands the power of repetition. It knows that audiences often want the familiar. The lonely road, the flickering light, the cabin in the woods, the person who says, "I'll be right back," and absolutely should not. The mask, the music, the sudden silence before something happens. These details become ritual. We know them, and we expect them, and still we lean forward. That is one of the strange pleasures of horror. We may know the shape of the story, but we want to see how it changes this time. Who notices the danger first? Who ignores it? Who breaks the rules? Who makes it to morning? Slashers are often criticized for being formulaic, and sometimes they are. But folklore is formulaic too. That is part of its power. A repeated story becomes familiar enough to enter memory. The pattern teaches us what to watch for. Don't go into the woods alone. Don't ignore the local warning. Don't assume the empty cabin is really empty. Don't split up. Don't laugh at that old story. Don't trust the silence. And perhaps most importantly, if you survive, tell someone what happened. So that brings us to the final girl. In slasher stories, the final girl is the one who remains, the last witness, the survivor, the person who sees the truth when everyone else is gone. She's often alert, resourceful, cautious, and underestimated. Sometimes she survives because she's clever, sometimes because she's lucky, and sometimes because she's willing to fight. And sometimes because she is the only one who truly understands what is happening. But the final girl is more than a character. She's a keeper of the story. She becomes the person who carries the warning forward. In that way, she resembles figures from folklore. The survivor who returns from the woods. The child who escapes the witch's house. The traveler who makes it home from the haunted road. The only person who hears the knocking and lives long enough to say, "Don't answer it." The final girl does not simply survive the monster. She survives the story. And once she does, everyone else wants to know how. What did she see? What did she hear? What did she do differently? What rules did she follow? What mistake did everyone else make? That's part of the fascination. The final girl becomes proof that the nightmare can be endured. But she also becomes burdened by the thing everyone else turns into entertainment. For audiences, the story ends when the credits roll. But for the final girl, mourning is not the end. It's the beginning of remembering. That may be one reason slasher films have such devoted followings. People return to them not only for fear, but for ritual. They watch them every summer, every October, every Friday night with friends. They know the music cues. They recognize the masks. They quote the rules, and they debate the best sequel. They argue over which survivor was the strongest, which killer was the most frightening, which camp was the most cursed, which ending still works years later. Horror fans often know these stories the way others know fairy tales, not because they believe every detail is realistic, but because the pattern matters, the mask matters, the location matters, the rules matter, and the return matters. A slasher villain can become almost folkloric, a figure attached to a place, a name whispered with recognition, a shape people dress as, parody, fear, collect, and celebrate. The frightening thing becomes familiar, and the familiar thing remains frightening. That is a strange combination, and it may be one of the reasons these stories endure. They let us rehearse fear from a safe distance. They let us ask what we would do. Would we run? Would we hide? Would we answer the phone? Would we go back for our friend? And would we survive until morning? And beneath those questions is another one. What kind of story would be told about us afterward? This, I think, is the unsettling power of summer slashers. They take a season of freedom and fill it with rules. They take places of escape and turn them into unsafe sanctuaries. They turn lakes and cabins and camps into modern folklore. And they give us the figure of the final girl, not simply as the last one standing, but as the witness, the warning, the one who knows what really happened when the lights went out. So, draw a little closer to the lantern light. Tonight's story takes us to a summer camp with a beautiful name, a dark history, and a lake that may have remembered more than anyone wanted it to. Tonight's story is called The Last Counselor at Wrenwood Lake. Everyone in Mercer County knew what happened at Camp Wrenwood, or at least everyone knew the version that had been told enough times to become true. In the summer of 1987, Camp Wrenwood was preparing to open for the season. The campers were due to arrive in 4 days, which meant the property was occupied only by counselors, the camp director, and a few staff members there training for the week. It should have been the easy part of the summer. Lifeguard tests, cabin assignments, canoe checks, first aid drills, archery safety, practice campfires. The old welcome song sung off-key beneath a sky full of stars. Camp Wrenwood sat on the northern shore of Wrenwood Lake, tucked between pine woods and a 2-lane county road that hardly anyone used unless they meant to. The camp had been there since 1942. It had green-roofed cabins, a cedar dining hall, a boathouse, an archery field, a swimming dock, a nurse's station, and a wooden sign at the entrance carved with a little bird perched on a branch. Welcome to Camp Wrenwood, where summer sings. That was the slogan. It appeared on brochures, t-shirts, mugs, postcards, and the old canvas counselor bags given out every June. Where summer sings. By the end of June 1987, no one in Mercer County could hear those words without going quiet. The final night of counselor training began with a storm. Not an unusual storm, not at first, just summer thunder rolling over the lake and heat lightning flickering beyond the trees. The counselors gathered in the dining hall after dinner while rain tapped against the screens. Someone played cards. Someone wrote a letter home. Someone else complained about the smell of damp socks. Claire Donovan was 19 that summer. She had grown up swimming in Wrenwood Lake and had dreamed of being a counselor since she was small enough to sit cross-legged at the fire ring and watch the older girls lead songs with flashlights tucked beneath their chins. Claire was assigned to cabin 4 that year. The Chickadees, 6 bunks, peeling yellow paint, a screen door that always stuck unless you lifted it before pulling. She had spent the afternoon pinning paper stars to the rafters so the youngest campers would have something cheerful to look at on their first night. At 9:30, the power went out. Everyone groaned. The camp director, Mr. Halpern, told them not to be dramatic. The generator would kick on, but it didn't. At 10, the phone lines went dead, and at 10:15, the camp van refused to start. By 10:30, the rain had become a sheet of silver over the lake, and the dining hall windows reflected only candlelight, nervous faces, and the darkness gathered behind them. That was when they heard the first scream. The official reports would later state that the killer was a man named Leonard Pike, 46 years old, former maintenance worker, fired from Camp Wrenwood 3 summers earlier after an incident no one liked to discuss. He knew the property. He knew where the tools were kept. He knew which cabin doors stuck, which paths flooded in heavy rain, and which windows could be opened from the outside. He knew the camp better than anyone else did. That was the official explanation. It was printed in the newspapers, repeated in documentaries, discussed in online forums decades later by people who liked to say things like, "Case closed." And perhaps it was true, at least partly. Leonard Pike was real. The knife found near the boathouse was real. So were the bloody handprints on the dining hall door. So was the counselor's whistle discovered hanging from a branch near the lake trail. So was the canoe drifting loose in the shallows, turning slowly in the rain, its paddle gone. So were the dark footprints leading from the boathouse toward the deck. Those details were real. Claire never denied them. But she had always said the official story left something out. By morning, Camp Wrenwood had become a crime scene. Deputies arrived just after sunrise and found Claire Donovan sitting at the end of the dock, wrapped in a wool camp blanket, staring out across the lake. Her feet were bare. Her hair was wet from rain. There was mud along the hem of her shorts and a thin cut across her cheek. She didn't cry when they found her, and she didn't speak for nearly 20 minutes. She only watched the water. When a deputy finally knelt beside her and asked how she had survived, Claire said, "I followed the singing." That sentence became part of the legend immediately. The survivor found at the lake, the last counselor, the girl who followed the singing. Police assumed she meant she had followed the voices of the other counselors, or maybe her own memory of the camp songs. Shock did strange things to survivors. That's what people said. But Claire corrected them every time. "No," she said, "the singing was coming from the lake." Leonard Pike's body was found later that morning, face down among the reeds on the western shore of Wrenwood Lake. Officially, he drowned while trying to escape. The storm, the darkness, the confusion, the slippery bank, that was the explanation. A convenient ending to a terrible night. But Claire said that's not what happened. She said the killer was alive when she last saw him. She said he followed her down to the dock just before dawn, moving through the rain with one hand wrapped around a large knife. She said she had nowhere left to run. The boathouse was behind him. The woods were full of shadows. The lake stretched in front of her, black and endless beneath the storm. And then she heard the singing. Not loud, not beautiful, and not quite human. Just a low, distant version of the Camp Wrenwood welcome song drifting across the water. "Where summer sings, where summer sings. Claire said Leonard Pike stopped when he heard it. He turned toward the lake, and his expression changed, as though someone had called his name from very far away. Then he walked right past her on the dock, down the steps, and into the water. Claire said he didn't fight. He did not call out. He only followed the song, and by sunrise, he was dead. No one believed that part, not officially, not then. The town had enough horror to carry without adding a singing lake, so the story softened around its strange edges. The killer drowned, the girl survived, the camp closed, the property was fenced off, the cabins rotted, the sign at the entrance split down the middle. Welcome to Camp Wrenwood, where summer sings. The words faded year by year beneath rain, mold, and sun. Claire Donovan left Mercer County before the end of summer, and for many years she did not return. But stories don't always stay where we leave them. They grow. They gather names, theories, merchandise, message boards, anniversary posts, and people who think tragedy becomes less frightening when it's turned into trivia. By the early 2000s, Camp Wrenwood had become famous in the way abandoned places sometimes become famous. There were websites about it, grainy photographs, teenagers filming themselves at the gate, true crime podcasts, limited-run t-shirts, a cheaply made documentary called The Last Counselor. Every June, someone would sneak past the fence and take pictures of the cabins. Every July, someone would post a list of Wrenwood rules. Never swim after sunset, never stay in cabin 4, never sing the welcome song near the lake, never ask the final girl what she heard. Claire hated that one most of all, not because it was cruel, but because it was close. She was 56 when she returned to Camp Wrenwood. She hadn't planned to. She had built a life 3 states away with careful edges and ordinary routines. She owned a small floral shop. She drank tea before bed. She never watched horror movies. She never gave interviews. She never answered messages from strangers who found her through social media and asked if she would sign old camp brochures. Then, one morning in late June, she received a call from Sheriff Mallory Reed, whose father had been one of the deputies at Wrenwood in 1987. "Claire," Mallory said carefully, "I'm sorry to bother you." Claire closed her eyes. People only used that voice when the past had found a new way in. "What happened?" Claire asked. There was a pause. "Some kids got into the camp last night." Claire stared through the front window of her shop. Outside, a woman walked past carrying sunflowers wrapped in brown paper. "How many?" 4, college age. They were filming something. Claire waited. Mallory exhaled. Only 3 came out. The shop seemed to tilt slightly. Claire set one hand on the counter. "Who was missing?" "A boy named Evan Marsh, 21. They said he put on some old mask, wandered down toward the lake, and started trying to scare them." Claire's fingers tightened against the wood. "They heard singing," Mallory said. Neither of them spoke. Finally, Claire asked, "Was he found?" "This morning," Mallory said. "In the lake?" Another pause. "Yes." Claire opened her eyes. "Was he alone?" "We'd think so." "That isn't what I asked." Mallory didn't answer right away, and when she did, her voice had changed. "There was a girl with them, Tessa Lang. She's the one who called 911. She keeps saying she followed the singing." Claire looked toward the back of the shop, where a bucket of white lilies stood in water. For a moment, the room smelled like rain and lake mud. "I'll come," she said. Camp Wrenwood looked smaller than Claire remembered. That was the first thing that hurt. Not the rot, not the warning tape, not the old sign leaning crookedly between two pines. The size. As a girl, the entrance road had seemed endless. Now it was just a narrow strip of gravel with weeds growing up the center. The green roofs were darker with moss. The dining hall sagged slightly to one side. The flagpole rope clinked against metal in the breeze. Someone had spray painted "Final Girl Lives" on the wall of the old nurse's station. Claire stood beside Mallory's cruiser and stared at it until the sheriff said, "I can have someone cover that." "No," Claire said. Her voice sounded unfamiliar. "Leave it." Mallory was in her 40s, with gray threaded through her dark hair and the tired eyes of someone who had learned too much about people. "I appreciate you coming. I didn't come for you." "I know." Claire looked toward the trees. Beyond them, hidden for the moment, lay Wrenwood Lake. She could feel it before she saw it. That was the part she had never been able to explain. Some places do not need to make a sound to call you back. Tessa Lang was sitting in the dining hall with a blanket around her shoulders. She was 20, maybe 21, dark hair, scraped knees, a long cut along one elbow. Someone had given her coffee in a paper cup, but she hadn't touched it. When Claire entered, Tessa looked up. Recognition passed across her face. Not celebrity recognition, more like seeing someone from a dream. "You're her," Tessa said. Claire hated how young she sounded. "I'm Claire." "The last counselor," Tessa said. Claire pulled out the bench across from her and sat down. Outside, deputies moved along the path in low voices. "What happened last night?" Claire asked. Tessa looked at the cup between her hands. "We weren't trying to do anything bad." "No one ever is," Claire said. Tessa swallowed. "It was just supposed to be a video. Evan was obsessed with this place. He knew all the rules and the dates and where everything happened. And he had this mask, but it was stupid, like not even scary, just something he bought online." "What kind of mask?" "Canvas, old looking, like a sack with eye holes. He said it was based on Leonard Pike, but I don't even know if Pike wore anything like that." Claire knew he had not. People had added the mask later. Stories like to give evil a face. "What happened after he put it on?" Tessa stared past Claire toward the dark windows of the dining hall. "He changed." Claire said nothing. "I don't mean he became possessed or anything," Tessa said quickly. "I know how that sounds, but he started acting different, like quiet and serious, like he wasn't joking anymore." "Where did he go?" Claire asked. "To the lake." "And you followed him?" Tessa shook her head. "No, not at first." Rain began tapping lightly on the dining hall roof. Claire felt every drop in her bones. Tessa looked up at the sound. "He was gone maybe 10 minutes, she said. Then we heard him scream, and we ran toward the boathouse, but the path was dark and everyone started panicking. I lost the others. And then—" Tessa's eyes filled with tears. "Then I heard singing." Claire closed her hand around the edge of the table. "What song?" Tessa began to cry. "I don't know, some old camp song." Claire looked toward the windows. Outside, the rain thickened. "Did you follow it?" she asked. Tessa nodded. "It led me away from the trail toward the dock. I thought that was stupid. I thought I should run for the road, but every time I tried, the singing got farther away, and I felt—" She struggled for the word. "Wrong?" Claire offered. Tessa looked at her. "Yes." Claire leaned back. For a moment, she was 19 again. Barefoot in the rain, the dock slick beneath her feet, a silver flash in the dark, a song on the water. Tessa whispered, "You heard it too." Claire nodded once. "What is it?" Tessa asked. Claire looked down toward the lake. I don't know, but it saved you. Claire was quiet for a long time. Then she said, maybe. That afternoon, Claire walked the camp alone. Mallory didn't like it, but Claire insisted. First, she went to cabin 4. The chickadees. The door still stuck. Claire almost laughed when she had to lift it before pulling. Inside, the bunks were bare. The yellow paint had peeled in long, curling strips. A bird's nest sat in the corner of one rafter. On the ceiling, above the first bunk on the left, one of Claire's paper stars still clung to the wood. Faded, nearly white, curled at the edges. Claire had assumed everything she touched that summer had vanished, but there it was. A little paper star pinned above a child's bed in a cabin no child had slept in for nearly 37 years. Claire reached up but didn't touch it. Behind her, the screen door creaked. She turned sharply, and no one was there. Only the open doorway, the trees, and the smell of lake water. She visited the archery field next, then the boathouse, then the dining hall door, where the old handprints had been scrubbed away decades ago, but seemed to remain anyway, not as a mark, but as a memory. Claire knew how memory worked. It stained places even after the evidence was gone. At the edge of the lake trail, she stopped. The path sloped down between pines. Wrenwood Lake waited below, gray beneath the cloudy sky. For a moment, she heard teenagers laughing, the sharp crackle of a campfire, someone tuning a guitar, rain against screens. Then the past folded back into silence. Claire followed the trail. The dock had been rebuilt at some point, and that surprised her. The boards were newer than anything else, though not exactly new. Weathered gray, softer around the edges, a sign had been nailed to the post. No trespassing, dangerous structure. Claire walked past it. Halfway down the dock, she stopped. This was where they had found her. This was where she had sat wrapped in a blanket while men asked questions she couldn't answer. This was where Leonard Pike had passed within arm's reach and continued into the water as though something beneath the surface had called him home. The lake was very still. Claire stood there until the rain stopped. Then, from behind her, someone said, "Where summer sings." Claire turned. Tessa stood at the foot of the dock. Her blanket was gone. Her face looked pale but determined. "You shouldn't be here," Claire said. Tessa gave a weak laugh. "I'm pretty sure nobody should be here." Claire couldn't argue with that. Tessa stepped onto the dock, and it shifted beneath her weight. "Do you think it's evil?" she asked. "The lake?" "No, whatever's in it," she said. Claire looked at the water. "I used to." "And now?" Tessa asked. Claire thought of Evan Marsh, a foolish boy in a purchased mask, a boy who had treated a tragedy like a game, a boy found face down in the reeds by morning. Then she thought of Tessa, alive, shaking, following a song through the dark. "I think," Claire said slowly, "some places remember what happened to them." Tessa came to stand beside her. "My grandmother used to say places could hold things." "Your grandmother was probably right," Claire said. "Hold them how?" Claire watched a ripple move across the surface, though there was no wind. "Like a song," she said. That evening, Mallory insisted Claire stay at the motel in town on the sheriff's office dime. Claire agreed. Then, at 11:40 p.m., she got out of bed, dressed, and drove back to Camp Wrenwood. She knew it was foolish. She knew it before she did it. But sleep had been impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the paper star in cabin 4. Every time the motel air conditioner hummed, she heard rain on the dining room hall roof. And underneath all of it, so faint she could almost pretend it was memory, she heard singing. The vehicle gate to Camp Wrenwood was locked. Claire parked beside it and sat for a moment with both hands on the steering wheel. Then she noticed the gap. Just beyond the gate, where the fence met the trees, the weeds had been pressed flat by other feet. A narrow path curved through the brush and disappeared into the dark. Years of trespassers, she thought. Of course. Claire got out of the car, slipped through the opening, and walked in. The moon was nearly full, and its light turned the gravel road silver. Insects buzzed in the grass. The cabin stood dark and watchful among the trees. The camp looked almost peaceful, and that felt wrong. Halfway to the lake, Claire saw the light, a flashlight beam moving between the trees, then another, then a third. Voices drifted through the dark, young, nervous, excited. Claire cursed under her breath. More trespassers. She followed the lights to the old fire ring, where 4 people stood in a loose circle wearing matching Camp Wrenwood shirts. Not old shirts, new ones, printed to look vintage. One of them wore a canvas mask pushed up on top of his head. Claire felt something cold pass through her. "Take that off," she said. All 4 turned and stared at her silently for a moment. The boy with the mask blinked at her. "Whoa," he said. Take it off." He slowly pulled the mask from his head. "We're not doing anything," one of the girls said. "You're trespassing," said Claire. "We just wanted pictures." "You need to leave." The boy laughed under his breath, and Claire stepped closer. He stopped laughing. "People died here," she said. The words came out flat, not emotional, not dramatic, but simply true. The girl looked away, and the boy with the mask shifted his weight. "We know." "No," Claire said. "You know a story." No one answered. From somewhere beyond the trees, the lake made a sound. Not a splash, not a wave, but something lower and deeper. The 4 trespassers went still, and the boy looked toward the trail. "What was that?" Claire held out her hand. "Give me the mask." "What?" "Now," she said. For a moment she thought he would argue. Then the woods began to sing. Not loudly, not clearly, just a faint thread of melody drifting up from the lake. The old welcome song. The one Claire had spent 37 years trying not to remember. Where summer sings, where summer sings. The girl nearest the fire ring whispered, "Is that a speaker?" "No," Claire said. The boy with the mask went pale. His arm moved slowly, extending the canvas toward her. Claire took it. "Go to the road," she said. No one moved. "Now." This time they listened. They ran. Claire remained at the fire ring, the mask hanging from her hand. The song continued, coming from the lake. She should have gone with them. She knew that. But instead, she turned toward the trail. Wrenwood Lake lay bright beneath the moon. The dock stretched over the water like a narrow tongue of wood. Claire stood at the shore with the mask in her hand, and for several seconds nothing happened. Then the lake began to move, not with waves, with something beneath the surface, a slow disturbance, a gathering. Claire's throat tightened. "I came back," she said. Her voice sounded small. The song softened, almost as though it was listening. Claire looked down at the mask, a cheap thing, a costume, a souvenir made from a nightmare. She thought of Leonard Pike, of Evan Marsh, of boys and men and stories that wanted blood because blood gave them shape. She thought of Tessa sitting in the dining hall with a blanket around her shoulders. Claire stepped onto the dock and the boards creaked. At the end, she dropped the mask into the lake, and it landed without a splash. That was the first impossible thing. The mask touched the surface and simply sank straight down, as if taken. The singing stopped, and silence rushed in. Then, from somewhere far beneath the water, Claire heard a voice. Not Leonard Pike, not Evan Marsh, not any of the counselors who died in 1987, but a girl's voice, young, familiar. She recognized it as her own, 19 years old, singing, "Where Summer Sings." Claire covered her mouth. The surface of the lake darkened. Then, very slowly, dozens of small pale shapes rose from beneath the water. Not bodies, not faces, but stars. Paper stars, like the ones she had pinned inside cabin 4. They floated beneath the surface, turning gently in the dark water, glowing faintly in the moonlight. Claire sank to her knees on the dock, and for the first time in 37 years, she wept. Not because she understood, she didn't. Not because she was no longer afraid, she definitely was. But because some part of that terrible summer had been held there. Not erased, not forgotten, but held. The lake had kept the song. It had kept the warning. It had kept the shape of what had happened. And perhaps when danger returned wearing a new mask, it had sung again. By morning, the story had already begun to change. The 4 trespassers told the police that Claire Donovan had appeared at the fire ring like a ghost and saved them from doing something stupid. They swore they heard singing. They swore it came from the lake. And they swore they would never go back. No one found the mask. No one found footprints on the dock except Claire's. No one found an explanation for the pale paper stars that washed ashore just after sunrise, dry as bone, despite drifting up from the water. Tessa Lang left Mercer County 3 days later. Before she left, she visited Claire at the motel. For a while, neither of them spoke. Then Tessa said, "I don't want to be the new story." Claire looked at her. "I know. How do you live with it?" Claire thought about lying, then decided not to. "You don't live with the story," she said. "You live after it. That's different." Tessa nodded as if she almost understood. At the door, she paused. "Do you think it'll happen again?" Claire looked past her toward the distant dark line of trees beyond town. "I think people like to come back to places they've been warned away from." "That's not an answer," Tessa said. "No," Claire said. "It isn't." Tessa gave the smallest smile, and then she left. Camp Wrenwood was demolished the following spring. The cabins came down, then the dining hall, the boathouse, the nurse's station, and the dock was the last to go. For a while, there was talk of turning the land into vacation homes, then a wedding venue, then a nature retreat, but none of it happened. The property remained empty. The entrance road grew over, and the sign disappeared. No one knew who took it, or if it had simply fallen. Still, every summer, on the last weekend of June, people reported hearing singing near Wrenwood Lake. Not many people, never crowds, just one fisherman packing up at dusk, one woman walking her dog along the county road, one pair of teenagers who swore they never crossed the fence. A long, slow drifting over the water. An old camp tune no one quite remembered learning. "Where summer sings, where summer sings." Claire Donovan never returned to the camp again, but every June she received an envelope in the mail with no return address. Inside was always a single paper star, and written across it in careful block letters were 3 words: "You made morning." Claire kept each star in a wooden box beneath her bed. She never showed them to anyone. She never gave another interview. And whenever someone asked what really happened at Camp Wrenwood in the summer of 1987, Claire gave the answer she had learned to give. The killer drowned in the lake. Then, if they pressed her, If they leaned closer with hungry eyes and asked about the singing, about the song, about the thing that saved her, Claire would look toward the nearest window, toward the sky, toward whatever water might be waiting beyond it, and she would say, "Some stories survive because people keep telling them. Others survive because something keeps singing." Perhaps that is why summer slashers continue to fascinate us so much. Not only because of the masks, not only because of the scares, not even because we want to see who survives, but because these stories understand something old. A place can hold a warning. A lake can become a legend. A campfire story can become a rule. And the person who survives the night may become more than a survivor. She may become the one who remembers what everyone else would rather turn into entertainment. The final girl is not only the last person standing, she is the witness, the warning, the voice that returns from the dark to say, "This happened, so listen." And maybe, beneath all the formulas and franchises, beneath the masks and sequels and familiar summer rituals, that is what keeps us coming back. We are not only asking who the monster is, but we are asking what it takes to survive the story. Please send your stories to thehollowbetween@gmail.com, and perhaps your story might be shared here beside the lantern light. If you've been enjoying The Hollow Between, I would be so grateful if you followed the podcast and shared it with someone who loves folklore, ghost stories, and the uncanny as much as we do. Word of mouth truly helps keep little lanterns like this burning and helps this strange little community continue to grow. Thank you so much for spending this evening with me, friends. And until next time, mind the hollow between. While many of the traditions, films, and horror tropes discussed in tonight's episode are part of popular culture, the featured narrative was created for The Hollow Between.